Hey everybody, Ryan Carson here with Carson Law Office, and I'm joined today with Tom. Tom is a commercial advisor at FCT Title Insurance, so that's First Canadian Title. They're located, head office is actually located in Oakville, and they're the largest title insurer in Canada and one of the largest in North America. We work exclusively with Tom on all our commercial and multi-residential transactions for our clients' protection of title insurance. And then Tom has some associates that help us exclusively with the single family residential policies. So we're really happy to have Tom on with us today. And Tom's going to take a minute to tell us a little bit about himself personally, his role with FCT and FCT generally. And then Tom's been so kind to give us a bit of time to go through about 4 or 5 questions that are just kind of hot topics or questions we have sort of frequently asked by our clients related to real estate, related to commercial and residential investing. So Tom, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thanks, Ryan. Great to be here. Thanks for having me on your channel, your show. We'd love to be able to talk about title insurance whenever we can. So to give you a little bit of information about FCT, we used to be called First Canadian Title. A lot of people still refer us to as that, but change the name to be shortened it to FCT. A little bit of background about FCT. We actually pioneered the concept of title insurance in Canada back in 1991. So I guess that's almost 30 years now, which is amazing. And it was crazy because it was in the beginning, and there was less than half a dozen people that started this company. And 30 years or 29 years, fast forward to now, we are at over 900 employees across Canada.
Wow.
Big growth for title insurance with us. And we're one of 3 or 4 main companies here in Canada that would provide title insurance. And we're proud to announce that this year we are actually one of the great places to work for 6 years in a row now, which is great because our employees, our team are, when they're happy, everyone's happy. So that's the number one driver in any company are the employees. And then that will provide great customer service, great products and services to our clients, which are the insured. So your clients, Brian.
Yeah, I know. And I can give you a little plug here in FCT. I mean, there are several different options available to us as lawyers to help protect our clients. And we've used some of them, in previous dealings in years. But for the last couple of years, we've been fairly exclusive to FCT just because whether you're dealing with yourself or your colleagues, I really enjoy that we've been able to go to like senior underwriters, senior managers, and actually right up the top, we've dealt with like the chief legal officer to get deals done. That just needed that extra sign off because it's above a pay grade or because it had a couple unique nuances. So I really appreciate that there's a good collaborative and teamwork approach by FCT with us for our client's protection, which ultimately is your client being protected, which is us. So I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Ryan, for your business. We really value it.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
So the first question that we have is, how is title insurance used in commercial real estate?
That's a good question. So same with residential, which a lot of people who are homeowners, they might not even know that they have title insurance. That's something that they're insured for. It's not the same as home insurance. But when you look at commercial title insurance and residential, a lot of it is the same in terms of coverage. And I'll go through some of the more unique coverages for commercial, but also what's the same or what's similar to residential, such as fraud and so forth. But in commercial, typically we insure many things, such as zoning. So if there's any zoning violations, we would insure things like that would be if there was a current use. So if you're operating as a restaurant right now and an owner purchases or a new owner purchases that property and expects to continue as a restaurant, we would make sure that that's going to be continued and permitted under the zoning bylaw. And then there's a lot more to it when it comes to fraud, which is also big, getting into fraud a little bit more. But commercial, it's mainly for, industrial areas, industrial properties, office space, retail, multifamily residential that are 7 units and more, gas stations. We actually even insured the Sky Dome. Remember the Sky Dome when it was called the Sky Dome?
Yeah, I still call it that.
Yeah, me too, actually. And we did that the first time, and then when it changed over to the Rogers Center, we title insured that as well. So we go from the small mom and pop shops to the biggest out there in Canada.
Nice, very good, very good. Here's a question that probably you and I could both give a little bit of insight to, but I'll let you kind of answer first, and then I might chime in with a little bit. But it says, is ordering commercial title insurance as straightforward as obtaining a residential title insurance policy?
Yeah, that's another good question. So for when it comes to ordering of title insurance, your clients, Ryan, can be assured that when it comes to ordering and getting the right policies to protect the insured is that the utmost value for you to do. So we would work with you, Ryan, to make sure we get the right coverage for your clients. So when you compare commercial to residential, it is more complex when it comes to the questions that we ask you. We would underwrite it slightly different, obviously because of more of the complex situations. But on your part, Ryan, you are working with us to making that order. So there is a lot of work on your end for when you compare your commercial to your residential too.
Yeah. And so, to our viewers that are wondering, what's the difference between the single family residential and the multi-res commercial orders? How does that differ? On our end, like practically speaking, behind the scenes, which clients won't see, there are more questions, as you've indicated, with multi-res and commercial. Single family residential, for the most part, is all streamlined through a software. So it's pretty efficient and quick to kind of, plug certain pieces of information into the software. And then you guys, through your software connection with our office, it's pretty easy to say, policy insured, within a short period of time. Because it's single family residential, there's much fewer items we need to independently search to provide to you on top of just the title search. With the multi-res and the commercial policies, one big difference is the additional searches we would normally have to do. Those typically are off title searches of building permits, work orders, zoning. Those are the main ones that we typically let our clients know we need to search. And then we need to, make sure we provide those search results to you guys when we do the orders so that you can make sure there's no exceptions to the policy's coverage. One of the other things that would be different that I'm told, I'm not sitting ordering the policies all myself personally, but my clerks all have indicated with the commercial and multi-res, but specifically commercial, I think, it's sort of an independent requisition each time. Like we're dealing with somebody specific. It doesn't go through the software program the same way. So it's more direct to your team at the commercial end. So that can take a little bit, where it might take a day to get an answer for the single family residential, it might take 2 or 3 days to do the commercial. That's not because, commercial's lazy or something. It's just because you ask more questions, you want to get more, product back from us, more searches, more details, etc., to make sure the coverage is comprehensive. So appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
I kind of alluded to this, in some of our answers so far, but maybe specifically talk about what are the different types of policies available.
That's a good question. Another one. So, you ready for this? There's only 2 policies, actually.
There you go.
It's you're expecting like 10,000 or something, weren't you?
Yeah.
We only have 2 policies. One is to cover the owner, which is the owner, the purchaser, and the other one is to cover the lender. Simple as that. And when it comes to coverage, there's more coverage for the lender, and that's simply because there's less risk for lenders when you compare that to an owner. Because let's say for an owner, for them to suffer a loss is going to be a lot higher than a lender suffering loss, because a lender, when they suffer a loss, they have to take over the property under power of sale, sell the property, and then suffer a loss. And if that is a loss that is payable under title insurance, that's when we would pay out. So yeah, that's it. Two policies, and that's the same thing for residential too, an owner and a lender policy.
Nice. That's good to know. Maybe a question of clarity. So is there like divisions though that things would fall into? So for example, if I'm just buying a personal residence that I'm going to move into and use as my matrimonial home, and I'm selling my matrimonial home, the purchase of that new residence would just be under single family residential policy, right?
Correct.
If I'm a real estate investor and I'm buying, let's say, a duplex or a tri or a quad, anything up to 6 units, and I'm buying it in Hamilton, I'm going to rent it out to McMaster and Mohawk students, etc. All right, let's scratch that. I'm going to buy that sixplexer down, but rent it to Stelco workers.
Sure.
Right? They're all separate units. These are all independent, six units or less. Would that be considered a multi-res policy?
So that would be, it would still be a residential insurance policy, but we would talk more about being as a multi-res. So then there are searches that you'd have to do, Ryan, to make sure that we comply with some other stuff. But we would still, up to 6 units, consider that as a residential policy. They're just a different, little more questions that we ask for you to do, that's all.
Right. And then I know that there was a distinction of this, and maybe it's not anymore, and this is maybe under the residential branch, so it might not be fair to put this on you, but I'll do it anyways.
Sure.
Is there a designation in like a specific subgroup of like boarding houses or rental houses where it's, example I gave before, like 5 or 6 max to
yeah, like a rooming house you're talking about?
Yeah, so it's the same one, home. It's 6 bedrooms.
Yep.
That would be a rooming house policy.
That would still be a residential policy, but then we would, I guess, look at it as a rooming house, and then more questions would be asked to you, Ryan, so that we can clarify and underwrite it as such to make sure you're getting the right coverage.
Great. Okay, very good. Yeah, and then obviously anything over the 7 units, even though it might be used in zone residential, you're going to put it under commercial with an actual like commercial business, like a barber shop, gas station, restaurant, does whatever it happens to be. If it's commercial or 7+ units used residentially, that's all under commercial.
You got it. Yeah. So a mixed use unit. So if you have like a barbershop on the main floor and then a residential dwelling on the top, that piece of land we would consider as a commercial property for title insurance. However, if you have a 7-unit multi-residential property, our guideline is commercial, but what if the lender wants, let me back it up. What if it was a 6-unit residential property and we would consider as residential, but the lender had underwritten that as a commercial property? So then we would say, well, we'd go with whatever you want from that perspective. So we can then go with a commercial policy, given that it's 6 units and that should be residential for our guidelines. So we're flexible in that way.
Right. Perfect. Maybe I'll segue to another question here. Are there any areas that are not covered in commercial title insurance or limits to commercial title insurance?
Yeah, so generally speaking, we don't insure any environmental matters. So this comes up a lot when we're dealing with gas stations or anywhere where it's near, Stelco or any of those areas where it's very heavy and industrial. So environmental matters are all excluded.
Okay.
That being said, there are also distinctions between an owner policy and a lender policy, because as you mentioned before, with the owner policy, there's no coverage for outstanding work orders and building permits, so that with those things, as a purchaser of a commercial property, Ryan will be doing those searches to make sure that there's nothing outstanding and that we're dealing with those things up front. However, whereas if you compare that to the lender policy, then the lender would have coverage on the work orders and building permits. So this means if you're doing a finance transaction, Ryan, and you have your one of your lender clients financing on a property, you don't have to do those work order searches and building permits and zoning and all that, because it's all covered.
Perfect. Okay, that's great to know. So basically, the rule of thumb is single-family residential. The lawyer doesn't have to do a lot of the additional, I call them off-title searches,
Right.
Work orders, zoning. We'll of course do a actual title search, which is
Yep.
in the registry office. But the off-title searches we don't have to do because you guys will insure it no matter what.
Correct.
Predates the purchase or not, as long as we don't know about it. But with the commercial and the multi-res, we have to do those off-title searches because you want to see that there's been no positive results that would need to be dealt with. If it turns out after the fact, when our client owns it, there's a permit issue. Well, as long as we did it and there's no hit, then there should trigger some coverage under your policies.
Yeah, another actually great coverage that I should mention is, Ryan, when you're writing out, let's say, for work orders for one of your purchaser clients, and your response that comes back from the municipality saying that there are no work orders outstanding, that's great. So you close your transaction based on that information. However, we do find sometimes, not a lot, but we do find sometimes, especially now in COVID, that sometimes the response that you would get is inaccurate. So for that same example, Ryan, if the response says no outstanding work orders, but then what happens if you close and then 2 months after, that same person from the city says, "Oh, I'm sorry, but I was looking at the wrong property. There's actually 2 outstanding work orders for that property that you just bought." So title insurance is great in that perspective, because we, FCT, will be now would be to pay for everything to lift those work orders. So whatever work that requires to be done, we are going to be on the hook to pay for that and lift those work orders because you received a wrong answer, basically.
Right. You'll basically cover their error and omission.
Yeah. So then, you being one of the best lawyers out there, which I know you are, even you as being one of the best, you can't really rely or ensure other people are telling you a correct response.
You have to take people at their face value that they have given us accurate info.
Yeah.
Perfect. 2 questions left. What is the most common misconception about commercial title insurance?
So I would assume that this is a more general question that, we cover for everything. So we even cover for, let's say, the functionality of the HVAC. So if the HVAC is not working, let's say on a commercial property, that we would pay for that. Unfortunately, it's not, because that would be more for, I guess, property insurance as opposed to title insurance.
Yeah.
However, if there's a work order outstanding, let's say for a lender that you're financing on a transaction, and you don't write off your work orders, right? Because a lender is covered for that. And then later on, the lender suffers a loss because they've taken over doing a power of sale, and then that would be now covered because there's work order coverage. So I guess what I'm trying to say is we cover for we don't cover for functionality. We don't cover for everything when it comes to environmental. And one of the things that people might be shocked is that in residential, people also think that we cover for boundary walls and fences. So fencing is actually not something that we would cover in residential. However, in the commercial space, we actually cover for fencing. And you might think, well, why is that? Because it's higher dollar amounts and all that. But But if you think about it, residential, there's fences on every single property, or most, I would say. But on commercial, for example, a Costco or a gas station or an apartment building, fencing is sometimes not there. So that's why we can offer fencing coverage for commercial. One of the small differences.
Interesting. Okay, perfect. Last question. What should buyers expect throughout the purchasing process, and what is the cost of title insurance? I know that's a tough one because it's going to greatly depend for you, but maybe just let us know, like, generally what should clients expect when they deal with FCT in the buying process and maybe in the claim process. That might be good for them to know. Like, if
Sure.
you'd have to file a claim through their commercial policy, how does it kind of start and process and end? And I know that could depend as well, but then maybe give us a range of, your smallest premium you've ever seen to your biggest one, what seems to be kind of the running average. And I know you guys have a formula for trying to figure that out too, like to a certain amount, it's going to be a base number of X dollars, and then everything over and above is, based on. So I'll let you say that.
So I guess what I can tell you is that for commercial only, the premium does start around $375. So that's for one policy. For let's say a commercial condo unit, that's like less than $500,000. It costs only $375 for the premium for that transaction. And you're right, when the value of the property goes up and the different types of property, and if there's a loan or a mortgage on it, then the premium would increase. What we found though with our research and our data is that the average sale or average premium price for all of our commercial, where we combine everything and we take an average of it, it's about $1,000 is what I would say.
Okay.
Because there's obviously a lot more smaller types of commercial transactions as opposed to larger type of over 10, 20, 30, 50 million type of transactions. And then if we talk about claims, or did you have a question before I jump into the claims part?
Well, that's interesting. I would have thought it would have been more expensive, so that's interesting to know.
Yeah, I mean, that's an average. We had like that Sky Dome deal. That was a big one. I don't know what the premium on that one, but it was a lot.
Yeah.
But one of the interesting thing is that the average lender claim is 60 times greater than the average premium. So let me repeat that. So the average lender claim that a lender would claim on their title insurance policy, 60 times higher than the average premium the lender is paying for that loan policy.
That's very interesting. So seems to be a lot of value for the person independently on their policy.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean and as a lender or as an owner of a property, if there's a matter that you think title insurance can pay out as a claim, contact us. Feel free. We take your calls. We're very quick in terms of claims. You can reach out to Ryan as your lawyer, and then we'll get in touch there. But we get claims all the time, and sometimes it's a small claim, sometimes it's a big claim. But we look at every single one with the same amount of due diligence on there.
Right. Okay. Perfect. Well, those are the questions that we had kind of scripted for today. Really appreciate your time, Tom. And as always, enjoy working with you and your colleagues at FCT. And, if there's anything we can ever do in the future for you guys, just don't hesitate to let us know. And for all of you out there watching, the main thing I would say to take away, if you're a client or a potential client, or you're just watching for information gathering, the most important part is make sure you title insure your transactions, whether it's single family, multi-res, or commercial. People ask me all the time, do I have to do it? And there might be certain instances where you don't have to. Most deals, it's more or less mandatory. And I think even if it wasn't, it's really silly not to. Title insurance is really one of the only ways to get fraud protection. And because there's so many additional components of coverage out there, as Tom said, given the amount paid the one time versus the actual payout if you have a claim is drastically out of proportion. It's far less expensive to pay it the one time than it is to get your actual payout of coverage. It only makes sense. So don't hesitate to title insure your transactions ever. And if you have any questions ever, just reach out to me or Tom.
Can I leave with one food for thought?
Absolutely.
So there's a statistic that I'd like to share with you is that 52% of our claims that we get at FCT are related to issues that you, Ryan, as the best lawyer in Canada, cannot insure. 52% of those claims, such as fraud that you just mentioned, such as the errors in your responses that you receive, such as super priority liens from CRA, such as legal fees that we have to pay on behalf of the insured to rectify a situation. So all that stuff is more than half of our claims that we get.
Well, that, and there you go, everybody. There's the value in, for $1,000 average. I mean, I know there's some people out there that would have more expensive policies, but even a couple thousand or 10,000 or whatever it happens to be, I mean, if you're buying a property that has a premium, north of the average, then it probably means your claims are going to be significantly north of the average claim as well. And so to make sure you get that coverage and that value, like covering the lawyer costs to rectify the issue, everybody knows how expensive lawyers are. So it's always, it just makes sense, insurance, better to have it and never need it than need it and not have it.
Last food for thought, I promise. You can see this as an analogy of you, Ryan, being the belt of your pants of your clients. When you add title insurance, we're adding suspenders to the pants, that if you do suffer a loss, that you don't suffer a loss because your pants are not going to drop. Okay, that's the one, but belt and suspenders.
Yeah, extra protection wherever possible. Perfect. Well, thanks a lot, Tom, and all the best, and stay safe out there, and take care.
Thank you. Likewise.
Bye.